Hi, I'm Genevieve and I'm the visitor assistant at the Museum of Richmond. Today I'm going to be talking you through how to make this traditional trench cake that was made by the families of soldiers fighting on the front. You'll notice that the ingredients in it are very similar to a traditional fruitcake, and that's because the ingredients are long lasting and it won't spoil on the long journey across the sea. What's great about this recipe is that it's made of store-cupboard ingredients, so back in World War I, when there were food shortages, it's very easy just to take things down from the cupboard, mix it up and make a lovely cake to send to any loved ones. And that's what I'm going to do today. I had most of these things in my store cupboard at home, so fingers crossed you do too. What's also great is you can swap out ingredients that either you don't have or you don't like. So I'm using sultanas in it today, or you can swap it in for chocolate chips, maybe a different type of dried fruit that you prefer. It's really versatile and you can really make it your own. And seeing as we can't do the normal Remembrance Day parades or services, if you have children, it's a great way to sort of broach the topic of the war and what people went through, maybe food shortages, but also the condition of soldiers on the front. And if you're by yourself, it's a nice bake, and it's also a great way for you to self-reflect and also think about maybe experiences of your family or other people, and it's a nice way to sort of hone in on that time in history. I've already preheated my oven to 170 degrees C, and I'd probably go for 180 if you're in a gas oven. And I've already pre-lined my circular baking tin. So I'm going to start by sifting my flour into a bowl, just like this. There we go. And then I'm also going to add all the rest of my dry ingredients. So that is 2 teaspoons of cocoa powder. If you like it a little bit more chocolatey, you can add a bit more. If you like less chocolatey, add less. Then I'm going to add in my sugar. I've used brown sugar, dark brown sugar, but you can use light brown or any other sugar that you have in the cupboard. The darker the sugar you use, the more treacly the flavour of the cake will be. So it's really just down to your personal preference. So next we're adding our spices. I've chosen to include nutmeg and ginger, but you can choose whatever other spices you have in the cupboard. So I'm using about half a teaspoon of each, and that's just to give the cake a little bit of warmth. I've got my sultanas. The recipe calls for currants, but because sultanas are all I have, that's what I've used. As I said previously, you could use chocolate chips or a different type of dried fruit, maybe dried cherries, or whatever you have sitting around in the cupboard. So add those in. Now I'm going to add the zest of 1 lemon. So while lemons maybe weren't typically used, they do add a nice zesty flavour. You could use an orange or any other citrus fruit that you fancy. Now I'm just going to give it a quick mix, just to make sure that everything's nice and evenly incorporated for when we add our wet ingredients. So you want to rub the butter or margarine. The recipe says margarine, but I've used butter because again, that's what I have. What's great about this recipe is it's really easy to make vegan. You can just swap out the milk that we're going to use later for a plant-based milk. I'd recommend coconut, it gives a really nice flavour if that's what you fancy. And then you can just use a plant-based spread as well. So we just pop that in. And I've made sure that my butter is at room temperature, so it's a lot more easy to mix in. And make sure you've washed your hands, clean hands always when cooking, and you just rub it in. And what was great about this cake for soldiers on the front is that it was a little taste of home. The food the soldiers got was not always the best, and it was often scarce, so receiving a nice package from home, maybe with some hand-knitted mittens or maybe a new pair of socks, would be a massive morale boost. So that's why the government released this recipe of a nice cake that would last a long journey and improve the mood of the soldiers. Making sure digging from the bottom to see if there's any bits I've missed, and no, that's all fine, so I'm just going to wash my hands. So, hands washed, it's now time to make the raising agent. So I've got 1/4 pint of milk, that there, and to the milk I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vinegar. I'm using white wine vinegar, but you could use apple cider or maybe malt. I wouldn't use red wine, that probably wouldn't taste very nice. So the vinegar and the bicarbonate of soda are going to react together with the milk and create a nice raising agent. It's the same sort of reaction that happens in the making of soda bread as well. So now we add it to our dry ingredients. Get a wooden spoon and give it a mix. So making sure I've got all the flour from the bottom, everything's nice and mixed in. There we go. Now I'm going to take a spatula and my tin and pop the batter into it. There's my tin. I'm just going to scrape the excess off the wooden spoon and just so once all of that's out the bowl, I'm just going to smooth it into the creases. And don't worry if the parchment paper of your tin is a little bit scruffy. This wasn't a cake for looks, it was definitely a functional cake, and to show any of the men or even women fighting on the front that you cared and people at home were thinking about them. So it's a very rustic cake. It's more about the process and the love that went into it than how it looked. And now my cake is in the tin. I'm going to pop it in the oven for about an hour. The official recipe says 2 hours, but modern ovens are a little bit more powerful, so I'm going to put mine in for an hour and then check it with a knife then, and if it comes out clean, I'll take it out then. It might need a little bit longer. So here we are, this is the finished cake. I took mine out of the oven after 50 minutes because it was looking done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a knife in the top and check that it's all cooked through. Yeah, so my knife's come out really clean, so that means it's cooked all the way through. So if I were you, I'd check on your cake after about 45-50 minutes and just make sure that you're not going to overdo it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it on the cooling rack until it's completely cool, and then I'll take it out of the tin. So now the cake is completely cooled, we can cut into it. And there we have it, a lovely piece of trench cake. If any of you give this recipe a go, don't forget to tag us in social media and show us how you did. I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea and tuck into this.